Hey folks, what's $553,000 sound like to you? It may sound like a mistake. I'll get to that in just a minute, but first let me introduce myself. I'm Justin Miller. I'm co-founder and principal at the Chong Miller Group. And at the Chong Miller Group, we help people build wealth through real estate. This is the September 2024 real estate market update for single-family resale homes in the Las Vegas Valley. In the update, remember, I always look at the full data from the month prior. So I'm looking at the August 2024 data to understand what happened in August. I make comparisons to the month prior to that, so back to July, so what happened over a 1 month period, and 1 year to see what happened in August of 2023 relative to August of 2024. Some of the data are forward looking, but they are all actual sales generated data that I collect from the multiple listing service or from some other locations. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the statistics. Okay, the first statistic I want to cover is price. What was the median sale price? This is the number of dollars that the median home sold for in the Las Vegas Valley in August of 2024. Well, that number was $470,000. Now, you may remember in last month's video, we had gotten to $480,000. So we came down $10,000 or 2.1% from where we were at the end of July to the end of August. Now, you may also remember, if you think back slightly further, June, we were at 470,000. We spiked up to 480. We're back down to 470. Now, over a longer period of time, you can think of, we had previously hit 480 on a 1 month basis, May of 2022, and we are sitting at a number now which is basically 2 months lower in the history of Las Vegas Valley than we've ever been. So we're sitting basically at the top on pricing, not literally the top, but we are scraping right along there at the top edge of historical pricing for single family resale homes here in the Las Vegas Valley. Now, that's really consequential. I don't want anybody to become sanguine about what's going on here because it's hard to push further into record territory. It's just statistically always hard. On the other hand, we're not topping out. So yes, we did consolidate a little, come down a little in the month of August, but I don't think that that's foretelling anything that's going on. Okay, we are up 6.1% year over year. So that's from August of 2023 to August of 2024. And we are up 7.6 year to date. So that's from the beginning of 2024 through the end of August. Now, I will point out to you one more thing with this. The decrease that we saw in August is the very first decline we've seen in pricing all year. So if we look at any kind of reporting activity on any kind of asset, we see that price moves maybe generally in one direction, higher or lower over time. But we also see that very rare do things move consistently in one direction without having any variability. And so I think what we've just seen here is August, we saw some pricing consolidation. We've not seen any real change in the market. Now, this number is confirmed in the price per foot number, which I look at for confirmation as well as to understand additional information about the internals of the market. We saw in August $258. That is down. It is down 0.4% from the $260 per foot that we had seen in August. So that confirms price has come down a little bit. It actually came down a little bit less than the median sold price, which came down 2.1%. I'll talk about that in just a second, but I do want to let you know we are up from 245 a year ago. So we're up 7.0% from where we were in August of 2023. So interestingly, this is one of the first months we've seen in 2024 where the price per foot moved higher more quickly than the median sale price. It is also the first time we've seen in quite a while where the decrease in price per foot was less than the decrease in the median sold price. So what that suggests is, you'll remember we use this for confirmation, but also to get some insights that the lower end of the market seemed to be sort of the median price and below, the lower half of the market, seemed to be hit a little bit harder than the upper half of the market during the month of August 2024. So what that means is that prices at the top end of the market were holding up better, or we had some sales taking place at the upper end of the market, skewing the median price per foot slightly higher than it otherwise would have been based on what was going on in the lower half of the market. Now, one side note, I talked about this actually in my mid-year review video that I put out in early July of 2024. We saw median list price considerably higher than median sale price. Well, what happened in the month of August? So August here in the Las Vegas Valley, the median list price, that's the list price for the middle of the market, half of homes more expensive, half of homes below, $553,000. That is 17.66% higher than the median sale price, right? The median sale price that's what's actually transacted in the market. So that middle house sold at 470, but the middle house for all of the listings is listed at 553. So considerably higher than what's actually selling. And we talked about that in the mid-year review. Both that increases days on market. It means that a lot of sellers are priced inappropriately, and a lot of stuff isn't looking particularly good in the marketplace. So there's inventory that may kind of be illusory. It's sitting there, but it's not validly priced, or it's not looking like it's in a condition to be able to sell. So that's kind of an interesting note. I do want to point that out, that that's continued here in the month of August of 2024. No big surprise, right? We always actually see list price, median list price being a little bit above the median sold price, but the divergence now, $83,000, and at the mid-year review, $105,000. This is a really big divergence. It suggests there's some really bad pricing models that listing agents and sellers are trying to impose into the market, and they're not going to hold. They're not going to work right. So if you're thinking about selling your house, make sure you're getting your agent to give you really realistic numbers as to what you should be looking at. It's not about what you want or what you think or what you feel. Those things may cause you to decide this is not the time to sell, or it's a great time to sell. But if you're actually trying to sell, you want to be priced in a manner that is actually going to attract buyers so that you can make that sale. Otherwise, you just sit there wasting everybody's time, having people traipse through your house and complaining about it, right? I mean, who wants that? Who wants strangers going through your home to complain about it? That's nonsensical. So if you're thinking seriously about selling, think really seriously about the pricing model. Think really seriously about what your agent's telling you. And if your agent's just saying, oh, we can price it however you want, they're not helping you. They're really not helping you, because what's being priced right now on the market is $83,000 too high. And so you're not going to sell your house for an extra $83,000 if you're the median home. So it's just that's not realistic. All right. I do want to make one other pricing comment here, because this is something that we all read the news wherever it happens to be coming from. And Las Vegas is, of course, Las Vegas is not the nation, but it's a part of. And so we hear things like, median sale price across the country is, and it's some particular number, and it makes Las Vegas sometimes seem like, wow, we're pretty expensive here. Well, actually, the way the median sale price is calculated on those national statistics is all townhomes, condos, and single-family homes lumped together as if they're the same thing, right? And then all of the individual markets are lumped together, and it gives us some composite number that, hey, the middle transaction took place at this for all real estate transactions. Well, if we did that calculation for Las Vegas, we're not looking at $470,000 for a single-family home. We're actually looking at $437,475. It's interesting. It's kind of meaningless, but it's interesting in the sense that we can compare that to the national, an interesting number of what the middle real estate transaction happened to be. The national number for August, as best as can be calculated here early in September, was $430,000. Now, that's up about $1,000 from the prior month, from the end of July. So there's some reason to believe that this is kind of accurate as a representation of what this global number would be. Well, so let's compare that to Las Vegas. 430 nationally, 437, 475 in Las Vegas. That means the middle real estate transaction in Las Vegas in August of 2024 was 1.7% higher, $7,475 higher than the middle transaction across the entire country. So when we actually compare apples to apples, right, same data type to same data type, Las Vegas is not an expensive market. It clearly is sitting right around the average for the entire country. So if you think, well, Las Vegas is so expensive and I can't afford here, or I can get this really nice place here, I could do the same or can't do the same, whatever. Yes, you could find really inexpensive markets like Detroit or like Akron, Ohio, but you're not going to find middle market places that are that much cheaper because we're not overpriced relative to the middle of the market. Las Vegas is very much in the median for the entire country. So kind of an interesting note. Some people complain sometimes Las Vegas has become very expensive. Compared to the national numbers, we're actually not. We're sitting right there. We happen to be 1.7% higher, but that's a statistically dubious amount of difference. All right, so that's pricing. That's a number of things about pricing. Median list price, way high. Median sold price came down a little bit, came down 2.1%, giving back that little bump that we had in July. We're back down to that same number we had in June. We've had only 3 months in the history of Las Vegas where dollar price for the median sold house was higher. And we came down a little bit on median price per foot. Okay. But what about what's going on inside the market, the demand and the supply that help determine what those prices are? Well, this is where August becomes a little challenging for us. And I want to reference you back to my mid-year review. If you haven't seen it, I've got it linked at the end of this video. When you get to the end screen, you can just click right on it and you can go and watch that because there's some important information about how I think this year is going to unfold in the second half. And we're in the second half. All right. So demand data, that's number of actually sold properties as well as number of pending contracts. Contracts have been written between a buyer and a seller, but not yet sold, right? The property's going through the escrow process. So let's look at sold first. 1,851. That is down 5.2% from 1,957. We are up 4.6% from the 1,811 that we saw sold in August of 2023. Kind of, not important information. I give it to you just because I always give you that annual comparison. And the annual comparison generally helps us understand seasonal issues. So in July and August, generally sales come down a little bit. So we have come down a little bit. That's fine. But the numbers last year were very, very low relative to what we would normally see. In fact, in the mid-year review, the number that we had seen for total sales that took place in the first 6 months of 2023 compared to the number that we saw in the first 6 months of 2024, we were up 2.0% over the 6-month comparative periods. But 2023 was generationally low in terms of sale volume. So this month, August of 2024, we came down actually. We came down 5.2%. We're actually pulling back to approximately level right now through the first 8 months of 2024 relative to the first 8 months of 2023. So we're very slow transaction volume. High interest rates clearly inducing that, low inventory clearly influencing that. So note that, all right? Transactions came down. So there's closed sales transactions. What about pending? 1,781 pending contracts, not yet closed, were written in August of 2024. That number is also down. It's down 2.6% from the 1,804 that had been written in July. And July's pending had come down a little bit from June. Now, that was not unexpected. I suggested that was what was going to happen. But so just to close the loop, we're up 8.7% from the 1,687 pending that we saw written in August of 2023. Now, interesting, our pending number is below the closed transactions. We saw that happen last month in July's numbers. I suggested that indicated looking forward that we were going to have slower transaction volume closed sales take place in August than what we did in July. And in fact, that's actually what happened. That the pending is again in August is below the sales. The closed sales in August suggests that September's numbers are going to come down as well. And so be prepared. We'll probably see September closed sales come down below what we saw with August. It's something to note. It's something to be cognizant of. I don't want to say worried about. I don't think that we're seeing demand simply disappearing. I think rather, again, look at my mid-year review video, those same influences, those macro conditions that I suggested would slow the market are doing exactly that. They're slowing the market. They're pulling demand down. And what were those macro issues? One was heightened uncertainty around the political environment. Another was heightened uncertainty around the fiscal environment. As I record this, we're sitting on the 7th of September. The federal government needs to be funded for the next fiscal year by the end of this month. We've got 23 days left. And of course, there's a couple weekends in there. Congress needs to fund all of the federal government prior to the end of the next 23 days. Whenever you're watching this, it'll be fewer days. If they don't, the federal government will partially or completely close down on October 1st. Now, they could give a continuing resolution. They could do a full funding bill. There's a variety of ways to close this issue. But some members of Congress have been playing chicken with the fiscal environment for the federal government for a number of years. That could happen again. And so there's uncertainty around the fiscal environment. And there's also high interest rates continuing to exist. Now, again, I'm recording this on September 7th. Interest rates, the US Fed likely now, there's increased certainty around this from what was in the mid-year review. It's still not definite, but likely will cut the Fed funds rate at their meeting on September 18th. If they do, that's great. They'll pull interest rates down further. Interest rates coming down is stimulative to the real estate industry. It helps to make building more affordable, so increase building. It also helps to make purchases of resale properties more affordable because people can get lower interest rates on their mortgages. Not that the Fed directly controls the mortgage interest rate, but mortgage interest rates respond to the overall interest rate environment where the Fed is setting at the very short term the Fed funds policy rate. Okay, so we may get stimulation with regard to interest rates, but we've got heightened uncertainty in the political environment, heightened uncertainty in the fiscal environment, and there's an additional issue which I highlighted in the mid-year review, and that was a small technical change in the way in which the real estate industry works, but that is having very large potential ramifications to how transactions actually arise and close. And that is creating a lot of lack of knowledge and a lot of uncertainty among a lot of real estate agents, as well as a lot of buyers and sellers in the marketplace. And that's going to take a while to clear. That's going to slow transactions because it's added friction in the market. And when you add friction into a market space, that slows transactions. Now, some agents are going to be good at accommodating these changes. I will be. Some agents are going to be horrible at accommodating these changes, and those agents will probably go out of business and leave the industry. And others will just take time to accommodate the changes because they don't like change or what have you. Over the past, so we are now more than a full month into this change here in the Las Vegas Valley, because we implemented the changes a little bit earlier than nationally was accomplished. The national changes are now fully in effect all across the country. We'll see what's going on, but over the past 6 or 8 weeks, I've met with 10 different brokers from different brokerages to try to understand how each of the brokers are advising their agents to deal with these issues. There is virtually zero agreement among brokers. And there are some brokers who are telling me they've got agreements with other brokers about what's going on, and those things are not happening. So there's a lot of contestation taking place in the environment of the real estate industry, right? The insiders of the real estate industry right now. It's going to take a while for that to settle out. Transactions can and will still occur, but there's frictions, and that's going to slow things down. All right. So that's the demand side. Sold, down, pending, down, and pending below the sold number, suggesting next month will also be lower for transaction volume. What about the supply side? So on the supply side, we've been looking at declining inventory since October of 2022. Once in a while, we see a little bit of what appears to be stabilization just to have inventory continue to fall 1 or 2 months later. Well, for sale, the number of houses, single-family resale, sitting in inventory at the end of August of 2024, 5,149, and that is up 1.1% from 4,890. So that's great news. We've got a little bit more coming into the market. By the way, this number being over 5,000, we've been generally speaking below 5,000, with the exception of a few months in 2022. We've been generally below 5,000 since about October of 2020. We've just been looking at really low inventory. What should inventory be in a normal market? About 11,000 houses for sale here in the Las Vegas Valley. We ain't there, right? We're at 50% of what that should be. We're looking at less than 3 months of inventory sitting in the market. That'd be the time to clear everything if we continued sales at the current rate. So normal would be between 5 and 6 months. We're sitting below half of where we should be, or just about half of where we should be for a normal market. So don't let any increase in inventory cause you concern. The reality is inventory is low, and we need more inventory so that buyers have more choices when they're looking at stuff, so they can actually make decisions that they find something that they actually like. Now remember though, list price is $83,000 higher than sold price at the median on both. So there's a lot of that inventory which is illusory, right? Yeah, it's there, but it's not realistic inventory because a house isn't going to sell for $83,000 in the median. It's not going to happen regardless of what the inventory situation looks like. We are up. We're up about 400 from the 4,786 that we saw sitting in inventory last year, a year ago. All right, new listings. New listings, we've got 2,998. This is good. This is actually up again some from the 2,910. So we're up 88 new listings from what we had seen the prior month. And just to level set here, new listings fluctuating like that month to month is not atypical. We don't necessarily see a lot of new listings flooding into the market during August. We should start to see some coming back in September. We are up considerably from the 2,513 new listings that we saw last year. Of course, last year, remember, we were just plowing to new depths on inventory levels. So this is good. We're not destroying inventory in this market right now, but there's no real indication that we're significantly building inventory. I will say I had been generally predicting over the past couple of years that we would see buyers coming back into the market ahead of sellers. And I still think that's true. However, right now, some number of sellers are probably coming into the market thinking, oh, good, interest rates are coming down and that will bring buyers, and the seller themselves needs to go buy something. So there's some pent-up sales supply that needed to come into this market. I think that we're just simply seeing that at the moment. I don't think that we're actually seeing a shift in the dynamic in the market. Okay, so one other general statistic here, and that is the back on market. Again, this remains very elevated, 674 written contracts for single-family resale homes failed in August. That means 26.7% of contracts failed during the course of August. It's a really bad number. I suspect these numbers are actually going to go higher through the remainder of the year. Why is that? Well, let's go back and look at one of the issues that is taking place with this structural change in the way the real estate industry itself works. So there are two major issues, one of which is buyers agents now must get their buyers to sign a buyer brokerage or buyer representation agreement before they can show anything to those buyers. So fine, good business practice, nothing really consequential there, except some buyers may get a little bit nervous where their agents have never shown them before that they need to do this. A lot of agents have worked without buyer brokerage agreements in the past. It was bad business practice. I've always used them. It's appropriate. Kind of interesting, there's been a splintering in the form that's used for the buyer brokerage agreements. Generally speaking, real estate agents here in the Las Vegas Valley use forms created by the general counsel at the Las Vegas Realtors Association, including the buyer brokerage agreement. Well, with this change, this requirement that this form now be used, this requirement being imposed by the National Association of Realtors as part of a settlement to some litigation, a lot of brokerages have decided to create their own form. No big problem, except that Keller Williams has one form, and Berkshire Hathaway has one form, and Remax has one form, and whomever and whomever and whomever, they all have their own form. And in fact, Keller Williams, there are multiple Keller Williams offices here in the Las Vegas Valley. They may very well be using different forms between themselves. Now, it doesn't really matter in some sense. If you go talk to a buyer's agent and you're looking to hire them, you're going to have to sign the form. You're going to have to fill in the form along with that agent and reach agreement about what you're doing. The challenge comes when you want to start comparing between between brokerages, because now you're going to be comparing multiple different versions of the form, and that may be confusing, problematically so. So you can do it, right? They're comparable. They say similar things. Their point is the same, but there may be clauses in some that are different than clauses in others that may impact your rights and your responsibilities. And so hire a lawyer is the advice that's given, but that slows and makes more expensive all of the process. So I don't know that this is so great that the industry is splintering around this specific issue. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's more friction. Okay, so that's one of the things. The other of the things is the co-op. I'll explain co-op in a second if you don't know it. The co-op is no longer allowed to be advertised in any way in the multiple listing service. Now, the co-op is the amount of commission that would be paid by a seller to a buyer's agent upon closing of a sale. So seller pays listing agent, their own agent, a commission. Seller may also pay the buyer's agent commission, all or part or none of that. Well, this settlement agreement removes the ability to advertise what amount of co-op, including zero, might be paid by a seller. This is a problem. It takes away transparency in the transaction, right? It's no longer prospectively knowable when you're looking at a particular listing whether or not the seller is going to pay the buyer's agent's commission, all or part. So there's additional investigation, i.e. friction, that needs to be overcome now with regard to the showing of every potential property for sale to a particular buyer. Well, once we get past that, and by the way, sellers have never needed to pay co-op, and if they wanted to pay co-op, they could have paid a co-op of any level, 0, 10%, whatever it is that they wanted to pay. But now they can no longer advertise that in the multiple listing service. So I cannot tell you that's a great thing. It's actually a really weird thing, but that's what it is. That's the settlement agreement. Those are the two biggest parts of it. And that one is the most problematic. Now, we know that this also is going to impact the post-contract issues. So you get into contract and you go through escrow, and during the escrow you have inspections, due diligence as it's specifically referred to. You have repairs that may come out of the inspection process. You have the appraisal. You have the loan application and underwriting processes. You may have HOA or common interest community, CIC, disclosure issues that need to be gone through. There's a number of contingencies. Well, the appraisal contingency has been problematic for quite a while, right? It's been problematic actually for probably close to 20 years now, and it's been problematic in different ways depending on how the market's evolved. But it's been really problematic since the end of the great financial crisis about a dozen years ago, and has become extremely problematic since the COVID shutdown and reopening. And that's causing problems in getting through escrow and leading to a heightened level of back on market. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the major things contributing to a higher back on market. Well, what does an appraiser do to get an appraisal? They look at the sale of comparable properties to evaluate, well, if this property, which is otherwise very similar to the subject property, the one in this contract, sold at X, that's a good indication that the subject property should be priced at X. One can take issue, and I do, with the particular ways in which the comparables are selected, comparables are compared, and the knowledge that the appraiser makes use of with regard to the contract on the subject property, right? Presumably, buyer and seller are unrelated, are in an arm's length transaction. And so the appraiser, in my view, should be taking the contract, the agreed sale price, is being really consequentially significant and should only, if you will, cause that to be violated if there's really good reason to say that there's something wrong with the transaction. Instead, a lot of appraisers are out there, and their incentive is actually for them to be out there, second guessing what the buyer and the seller negotiated, and instead trying to impose their own view of what the market may be, irrespective of what the actual transaction is. So if you had total knowledge about the comparable transactions and you wanted to impose that knowledge into the terms of this already written contract, that's hard, right? But it can be done. It's been done for over the course of time, a long period of time. But what if an appraiser does not know all the terms of the comparable sale? Well, unfortunately, because of this settlement agreement and the imposition of terms by National Association of Realtors onto all of the MLSs across the country, we no longer have some of that information. What information don't we have? We don't have information about what the co-op was, whether or not there was a co-op or what that was. We don't have information about other kinds of concessions. Well, what does that mean? Well, if an appraiser looks at a house and says, this contract is at $1 million, and they look at a comparable house and this contract was at $1 million, and it closed, right? It actually closed. There's a problem. Did this contract pay a co-op? Did this contract pay some other kinds of concessions? Let's say this $1 million sale that completed paid 10% in various whatevers. That means if you take out those payments made by the seller for the benefit of the buyer, there's actually $900,000 that house sold for. Right? All those concessions added up to $100,000. That house sold for $900,000 plus the concessions. Well, if you're an appraiser and you don't know that, you look, oh, it's $1 million house, this is $1 million house. Same thing. Well, this house comparably maybe should only be $900,000. What if it went the other way? This house sold for $1 million and there was no concession whatsoever, no payment of co-op, nothing. What's this house supposed to sell at? If the seller in the actual contract has decided to pay a 5%, a $50,000 buyer's commission, right? It's now undervalued in this contract because the net of the contract is $950,000 and this house sold for $1 million. How do you do a comparison to understand what the comparables are? Well, it's going to be really, really hard. And by the way, appraisers have started complaining about this so much that LVR just came out with a tweak. The tweak is now, upon closing, the listing agent must state yes or no there was a concession. Not how much, not what type, yes or no, there was a concession paid. Well, in all honesty, this tweak actually creates more problems for sellers than not having this tweak, because now the appraiser looks and says, oh, this sold for $1 million and there was a concession. I don't know how big the concession was, so I'm just going to assume some kind of number. I'm going to assume it was 5%. Right? Maybe reasonable, maybe not reasonable. Well, if this one sold for $1 million and there was a concession and I'm pretending it was 5% because there's no recordation of it any place actually, then this one over here that you wanted to sell that was $1 million and you got a contract for, it should be $950. How does that help anyone? It's harming a seller if the concessions that were paid were like $50. It's harming a seller who now is looking at a $49,950 hit relative to what they should have from an appraiser doing their job reasonably. This is going to be problematic. And by the way, there's a few sellers out there, a few listing agents out there who think since we don't have to publish the co-op in the MLS any longer, we can eliminate the co-op. We can eliminate payment from the seller to the buyer's agent. And that means seller's going to get more. The problem is we've got this change in the structure of the information that's being disclosed, being captured, being recorded, being disclosed, and effectively becoming knowledge across the industry. But what we don't have is anything that increased the number of dollars in the pocket of the buyer when they come to look at a house to make a purchase. So if the seller decides they're not going to pay a concession, a buyer's co-op perhaps, what's the buyer going to do? They may not be able to afford the house any longer that they otherwise could have afforded. Now, I'm not saying all sellers need to pay co-ops, and I'm certainly not telling sellers what co-op, I'm not telling you sellers what co-ops to pay, but in my conversations with my own clients, we're talking really clearly about what this informational gap means. It does not mean that the clearing marketplace for real estate is changing in ways that are good. It means that the organization of information and the disclosure of information in the industry has become slower. It's become subject to frictions that are making transactions harder and making the appraisals harder as well. That's why I say these back on market numbers, I think they're actually going to get worse through the remainder of this year. There will be learning that takes place around how we deal with these kinds of issues. There will undoubtedly be further modifications to what goes into the MLS so that we can actually have knowledgeable appraisers engaging in appropriate appraisals. Because right now, appraisers are being put into a really problematic situation, as are buyers and buyer's agents, and frankly, as are sellers and listing agents, right? So this is going to be interesting. It's going to slow the market. Hence, I think transactions are going to be coming lower than what we've seen in the first half of the year. We're probably going to end up with overall transactions lower than we had in 2023 when they were at extremely low volume, extremely low levels. And this is going to continue forward. Now, will this affect pricing on closed transactions? I don't think so. We still have a shortage of inventory. We will have interest rates coming down, which makes anything more affordable. And we have demand that needs to be fulfilled. We're just going to have less of that demand present because of the macro uncertainties, and we're going to have slower transactions because of that. Okay, so that's it. That is the September 2024 real estate market update for single-family resale homes in the Las Vegas Valley. Again, I am Justin Miller with the Chung Miller Group. If you like these videos, please share them with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, your family members, anyone you think could benefit from having this knowledge. Feel free to comment, like, smash the notification bell, etc. You know what to do. It's a YouTube video. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And remember, the 2024 mid-year market review is linked right here in this video. And I suggest you go check it out for some more in-depth information. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye-bye.